Gotcha.
It is time for another look at the weapon popularity in Monster Hunter World. It's been about a month since the last time I did this. I originally wanted to do it week by week, but what I kind of figured out was that the statistics on the weapons don't change very much. I mean, they do, but it just shifts very gradually, right? So doing it by the week would be too much. I think by the month seems about appropriate. Before we get started, let's talk a little bit about a patch note that was released in one of the most recent updates as of this video. Apparently, the PlayStation 4 First Wyverian was not giving out accurate information, so they reset him on April 26th. They did. So he's been reset. I'm not going to be pulling my information from the PlayStation. I'm getting mine from the Xbox, so I'm assuming there's no problem on the Xbox. Alright, starting us out in last place, 14th place, we have the Hunting Horn. Ooh, wow, why do you guys dislike this weapon so much? I don't get it. It's not a bad weapon. If you've used a hammer, you've pretty much used a Hunting Horn. They're very similar. The Hunting Horn, it has more range. It doesn't have the cool flipping move through the air, I suppose. Maybe that's, the sliding attacks. Maybe that's why people don't like it. Maybe if it was a little more fantastic. Is it a cosmetic thing? Do you guys want it to look cooler? Do you not feel cool when you're holding a Hunting Horn? I don't know. The bagpipes don't do it for me. All these new Kulve Taroth hunting horns that are the bagpipe hunting horns, I hate the way the bagpipes look. I don't really like the way they sound either. I like some of the other horns, maybe like the drum beat horns. Those have a better sound. I like those a lot better. But I couldn't tell you why no one's using these. I suppose the Kulve Siege mode didn't help at all. You have the Kirin hunting horn that deals decent thunder damage, I suppose, but it doesn't have attack up large on it. It doesn't have affinity up. It doesn't really have any moves that are super relevant to fighting. Like, for example, if there was a hunting horn that had the part break skill and it could just give part break out to everybody, that would have been amazing. And what they could have done, they've got new horns in the game because of the drops from Kulve, but nobody's going to use. I looked at them; they're okay. You're probably going to use the one that mimics the Vespoid horn. It's basically a direct upgrade to it. But then they have an entirely new horn with its own set of music. Nobody's going to use that versus Kulve, so of course you're not really going to see a shift in the usage of the hunting horns because there's no reason to, and everybody's fighting Kulve Taroth right now, and there's just not a lot of good reasons to be using the hunting horn other than if you absolutely love it and you refuse to use anything else. I'm curious what you guys for those of you who are watching this video and you do use the hunting horn like religiously, what did you use against Kulve Taroth? Were you using the Kirin horn? Or how about the lightning drum? Lightning drum's okay, but it doesn't deal as much thunder damage. And then of course you have stage 4. Maybe you used the Bon horn. The Bon horn can put her to sleep. I know it gives fire resistance, which is good for the whole team. Kulve Taroth, she's dangerous in stage 4 because she corners you if you don't stay near the pillar, and if she corners you and puts down fire, you might find yourself running out of it and dying. Bon horn maybe in stage 4. I'm not sure. I didn't even bother. There were too many other powerful weapons that were just faster at farming her. So let me know. Coming in second to last place, 13th place, right? We have the Lance with only 2% of the population using the Lance. There's another one I don't understand. Why isn't the Lance more popular? I want to say, I have this theory that up at the top you have these weapons that they appear to be very easy to use, right? And they're not expensive to use. So I thought, maybe those are up there for people who are new to the game, getting into the game, and they're like, I'll use that, right? Well, it doesn't really explain the Lance then, does it? Because the Lance is, here's the funny thing. When you're picking a weapon out at the beginning and you're looking at them all, they describe the Lance as a difficult weapon to use. I so disagree with that. It's crazy how easy the Lance is. If you're more of a laid-back player, or you've been grinding all day and you really don't want to have to work for it, use the Lance. You just guard everything. They actually buffed the counterattack recently, and there's just no way to lose with this weapon. But I don't really understand why it's not more popular. I don't really feel like it does poor damage either. It doesn't do mind-blowing damage, but it does fine on damage, right? So 2%, second to last place, it just doesn't, I don't see it. Next, in 12th place, we have the light bowgun with 3% of the population. And right next to it, taking the 11th spot on the list, we have the heavy bowgun, which also has 3% of the population. So a heavy bowgun and light bowgun. I was talking about these last time, and just like last time, what I have to say about it is they're kind of expensive to use. I get it. I think that I've definitely seen more people using them over the fight with Kulve Taroth, especially in stage 4. I noticed a lot of people are using slice ammo and sticky ammo on Kulve Taroth's horns, right? If you didn't know this about sticky ammo, not only is it just really easy to use, but it can cause a KO because it deals stun. So it's very popular when you're playing multiplayer in the stage 4 of the Kulve Taroth Siege to just spam sticky on her. You're going to get 2 KOs for your team. You know, if they don't break her horns by the first KO, they definitely break her horns by the second KO. So I've been seeing a lot more of them. And if you're not doing sticky on like a heavy bowgun, the light bowgun slice ammo is also very popular as well. As you know, the light bowguns have a lot of mobility. You just kind of walk around shooting her in the horns and she never catches up with you. It's that easy. As long as you're always strafing, she never catches up with you. You don't even have to dodge. That's what I use personally for fighting Kulve Taroth in stage 4. It's just a light bowgun, Devil's Madness. It has both a lot of sticky ammo. It's got sticky 1, 2, and 3 actually. And it has slice ammo, and it does good damage. So I've been using the hell out of the Devil's Madness. See? Hell, devil is a pun. Anyways, so those aren't very popular. I have a big suspicion it's because they're kind of complicated to get into and because they're expensive to get into. A lot of people don't want to try to get the cluster ammo together or whatever ammo that people who are just getting in the game, they don't want to spend all the money on the ammo. Let me tell you what though, guys, when you do get into them, they're a lot of fun and they can really trivialize some fights because many of them carry the sleep ailment. If not sleep, they usually carry paralysis. So a really nice weapon. Okay, we are ready to move on to rank 10, where we get the Gun Lance taking up 3% of the population. So, with the Gun Lance being 3% of the population, that's actually not that much different from the Lance taking up only 2% of the population. Once again, I don't really understand why these weapons are more popular. Is it because you guys don't have the shield decoration? Once you get that guard up decoration, oh man, you can just block everything for days, right? I'm not as big of a fan of the Gun Lance myself. I like the Lance because of its advancing charge. It feels very mobile, actually. The idea that the Lance isn't mobile, it's just not true. You can get around with the Lance. With the Gun Lance genuinely feels like it's kind of slow, and I'm not a big fan of that personally. But the Gun Lance is actually high on my list of weapons to kind of like master. I love the way they look. The whole idea of them, you're holding kind of like a cannon in your arm, but not necessarily in the ranged sense, more like in the melee sense. It's kind of like it's basically an explosive weapon. I can't imagine that the Gun Lances aren't more popular based on the way that they look. So I have to kind of suspect it's because players aren't willing to learn how to use them. But because some of the weapons at the top are at least as complicated as the Gun Lance, I don't know, maybe it's because it's complicated and it's a shield weapon. Maybe the shield weapons aren't that popular. I have no way to tell. You guys have to tell me why you don't use the weapons, right? Be sure to tell me what weapon you like to use and why. But with the Gun Lance, again, it's just not scoring very high, and I feel like that's too bad because I've seen people do extremely well with the Gun Lance, and I'm very interested in learning more about it once I'm done kind of mastering the bowguns. Right now, so far, I understand the hunting horns, I understand the Lance, and I feel like I've really reached a point where I understand the bowguns, so I'm in the market for learning a new weapon right now. Moving right along, in 9th place we have the Sword and Shield, with only 3% of the population. Once again, this is kind of an underused weapon. I suspect that it kind of has something to do with the fact that it feels like a dual blade, except you do less damage and you can block. But especially for skilled players, they're probably not that interested in being able to block. I mean, I've used the Sword and Shield a lot more at this point, and when I use it, I end up just wishing that I had the dual blades. Now, I don't know what can be done to improve this, and I'm sure there's people out there who really love the Sword and Shield that don't want to hear somebody like me say that. And I haven't reached a point where I certainly haven't explored this weapon deeply, so maybe there's something I don't understand about it. But considering how fast you can put away the dual blades, being able to use items with the Sword and Shield isn't that impressive. I hate to say it, but that's just how it feels like. I'm not really worried about being able to use the wide range skill I'm not really worried about being able to use the wide range skill with the dual blades. I certainly can if I wanted to, because when I'm putting that weapon away, when I'm sheathing my weapon, it just happens instantly. So they really, I don't know. I feel like there needs to be some deeper reason for the sword and shield to lose out on the damage that it does when you compare it to the dual blades. Because right now, their playstyle feels very similar. Actually, you get close to the monster, and you have to basically be inside of the monster. And the big difference between the two is, well, the sword and shield can block when something goes wrong, whereas the dual blades you have to dodge, or you have to actually just get out of the way appropriately. But the dual blades don't have any problem with that, unless you're, maybe still learning how to play the game. It's not that hard to dodge the monster, so why do I need to guard it? With the lance and the gun lance, it was a little different. You can't move very quickly with those weapons. You're kind of immobile, and they have a lot of range, so it's kind of nice. You don't have to move. You just turn and you poke. With the gun lance, you got the explosive shells, right? With the sword and shield, you're just hack and slash with the little knife. Might as well have two little knives, right? So maybe they'll do something with the sword and shield. I would certainly like to see something happen. Maybe they could make the shield moves more powerful. I have no idea. Share your own thoughts on it, because if you main this weapon, I'd love to hear what it is that it does best. All right, coming in 8th place, we have the Switch Axe with 7% of the population. I've definitely used the Switch Axe a lot more this time. I have more of a perspective on it. This is actually, I wanted to talk about this before. I was thinking about it after using it. I feel like it's too bad that they didn't just have a regular axe in the game. Why does it have to be like this crazy morphing weapon? I know some of you probably love that about it, but I would have liked for those to be kind of like, something you can choose to do after you've mastered the original version. But yeah, I would have preferred to have a weapon that's just an axe. Imagine that, right? Maybe it could have had like a shorter handle and just done a lot of damage. I have no idea. Could have been like the best severing weapon in the game. Or maybe it could have been a weapon that also deals stun, like the hammer. But yeah, I would have loved to have seen maybe like a dual-headed axe, right? Something that just makes you feel kind of like a warlord. You go in there chopping up monsters. I mean, realistically, you've got all these other weapons like hammers, long swords, great swords, right? Look at them all. They all look like they fit. Then you've got like the charged blade and the switch axe, and those are your axe weapons, and they look totally bizarre sometimes when you're using them. They're like morphing all over the place, like you're from the future and you've got spaceships or something. It almost doesn't fit in. I'm not a veteran of the game, so don't jump on me too quickly for not loving these. But yeah, I kind of wish there was more of a, Dungeons and Dragons axe to use. And right now I feel like Switch Axe accomplishes that more than the Charged Blade does. I do like the Wild Swing on Switch Axe. That's a lot of fun. And it's got a little bit of a gun lance feeling to it too when you swap over to when you morph it, right? All right, 7th place, we have the Hammer with 8% of the population. That's a very fair number. I feel like if more of the weapons had a number just around there, that would be good. It would show you that there's a lot more diversity with the weapons. And again, I don't really know what would cause this. Would making the other ones more powerful really do it? They kind of did that with the hunting horn, right? They made the hunting horn a lot stronger. They gave it a buff. And that doesn't seem to be helping. People are still not using it. So maybe it's not all about damage. Maybe it's just about fun, right? It's got to be fun, or maybe it's got to look good. The hammers, they have that really exciting jumping attack where you spin through the air. Imagine if the hunting horns could do that as well. That would be cool. So, yeah, I don't know. 8% for the hammers is a very straightforward weapon. I enjoy using it just like I enjoy using the horns. There is a note I want to make at this point. So far, everything on the list from rank 7 to rank 14, going down, has been exactly the same as last month. That's right. Remember I said the statistics don't seem to shift very much. But from now on, everything kind of shifts, okay? So the next 6 weapons, they all changed a little bit. So in 6th place, we have the Greatsword, who has 10% of the population. He used to have only 9%. So there's actually been an increase in Greatsword users, which surprised me. I didn't expect that, but it makes sense, doesn't it? They released that special Blast Greatsword, right? And that was people love that. There was a day where every single investigation I went into, there was like 2 of those guys. So, but that only went up by 1%. So again, it kind of makes me think that the way that the statistics works is they're counting the aggregate usage of all the weapons over the lifespan of the game. Coming in at 5th place is the Charged Blade. I was just talking about axe weapons morphing rather than having like a classical axe. I finally started getting more into the Charged Blade. I at least can appreciate how powerful it is. And the fact that it has kind of a guarding option does really help differentiate it from the switch axe, right? So it's an okay weapon. I still have a lot of learning to do with it, but yeah, again, like I said, I can appreciate how much damage it's doing right now. And of course, they just had that Devil May Cry DLC come out, so everybody's using Dante's, Charge Blade right now. So Charge Blade, 11% of the population. Moving on, in 4th place, we have the bow with 12% of the population. So the next 4 weapons, statistically, it shows them being very close. The bow actually used to be in 2nd place, so it's fallen to 4th place. And it used to have 13% of the population, now it's only 12% of the population. So for whatever reason, the bows have been made a little less popular. I guess people aren't into them as much. I've been using the bow a lot recently, and what I can appreciate with the bow is that it's a very cheap weapon to use. And not cheap in the sense that it's easy, though it is easy as well. But I mean, like, if you wanted to use a ranged weapon, you have your options between the bow, the light bow gun, and the heavy bow gun. And the light bow gun and the heavy bow gun, they do run off of their ammo types. With the bow, you can just do normal shots or close range shots, and you're good. So I feel like for the majority of players who are still learning and they're still earning their money, they don't just have money to spend all day on ammo, this is probably their choice of ranged weapon. But I have to tell you guys, get out there and try those bow guns because they're cheaper than you think. And in a lot of regards, they can actually have more utility than the bow, right? The bow just does damage. The bow guns can do some really tricky things, and honestly, they can actually make some fights trivial in ways that the bow cannot. I'm thinking particularly of the slice ammo and the sticky ammo. Those are ammo types that, there's a lot of monsters where they'll get like a shield that ignores ammo. That's a big problem for somebody using a bow, right? I know that now. I've used the bow a lot more. You're using the bow guns when you're comparing this. You go into slice ammo or sticky ammo, you've gone into easy mode because it doesn't really matter if you hit the monster on his weak spot, his head. You're gonna get the damage, right? Because of the way those ammo types worked. So try out the bow guns if you are a lover of the bow. Moving into 3rd place, we have the Insect Glaive. The Insect Glaive has 12% of the population, and it was in 4th place from the bow. The Insect Glaive, as of right now, is my least used weapon in the game. I realize that is kind of one of those weapons where you have to do a lot of learning, and there's so many other weapons for me to learn that I haven't jumped into it. Despite this, it is the 3rd most popular weapon in the game, so somebody out there is certainly using this weapon, and it's not me. Tell me why you like the Insect Glaive. I was watching somebody fight Cove with it, and she spit vomit right onto them, and I watched them vault off of the ground to get out of the damage from the fire. It was very cool, and then they dodged away, right? So that was actually pretty cool, watching them get out of the fire that way, and it made me appreciate it a little more, at least a little more, right? In 2nd place, and completely unsurprisingly, we have the Dual Blades with 12% of the population using it. So again, notice that the top weapons, they're all very close to each other in terms of usage. So the Dual Blades is up from 3rd place. I've used the Dual Blades a lot more now. I wanted to understand them better, or why they're so popular. It's because they deal damage. It's very straightforward. They're completely uncomplicated. You just run forward, get a few hits in on your approach, go into your demon mode, fill the red bar up, and just deal tons of damage, right? And, I don't think that's ever going to change. I think that something Capcom could do is increase the risk for people using the dual blades, and that might make something like the Sword and Shield look more appealing. But I'm not the kind of person, this is a cooperative game, so I'm not really in favor of nerfing weapons. I would actually just prefer that the Sword and Shield receive a buff that makes it compete more with the dual blades, because I really feel like these two weapon types are very similar to each other, even though they don't appear to be. And then in 1st place, and you guys probably already know this because it's the only one I haven't mentioned, is the longsword with 13% of the population, no changes. It's held 1st place, and it's got the largest percentage of anybody using it, which is strange. I do run into longsword players a lot, but I didn't feel like I ran into them so much that they're the #1 most used weapon. So I don't know, maybe that's how it was when the game launched, and again, we're working with this idea that maybe this is the aggregate usage of all the weapons. And since then, maybe longswords aren't actually used that much. I don't know. But it is the #1 most popular weapon. Maybe it's being used by people who are busy soloing. I certainly think that that's a possibility. And of course, I imagine Capcom would count that as part of the weapon usage, right? So I've heard longswords be described as cheap, and I personally don't know why, because I've only used the longsword a few times, similar to the insect glaive. I plan on changing that, learning a little bit more about the weapon in the future, but as of right now, I'll leave it up to you guys to tell me why the longsword is so popular. I heard that it was in a Watch Mojo video the other day. How funny is that for like a top 10 cheap weapons? Right? So I never thought that it was cheap. I just thought that maybe it looked cool and that was why people used it. I don't know. I've never felt like I've seen somebody take the longsword and seem more powerful than the dual blades. I think dual blades, of all the weapons I've used, dual blades appear to be able to pump out the most DPS most quickly, but they're limited by their range, right? Alright, that is all 14 weapon types. I want to thank you all for watching this video. If you liked it, please consider interacting with the video. You know, you can leave feedback, you can share it, and more importantly, I'm just curious what you guys think of the list yourselves. Again, I didn't really know much about the longsword or the insect glaive and why they're so popular, but maybe you guys have more insight into that than I do. Also, get out there and use the hunting horn. Do it. Just give it a try. You'll like it. Maybe you won't. Maybe you guys don't like using the hunting horn. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Really? Oh my gosh, you guys! I just want to thank y'all so much!